There is a part of you that you have never met, not because it doesn't exist, but because you were taught to look away from it. It carries everything you were told was too much, too dark, too shameful to be seen, and it has been running your life from the shadows ever since. Today, we turn on the light. The concept of the shadow was first articulated by the psychologist Carl Jung, but what it describes is something every human being knows intimately, even if they have never had a name for it. The shadow is not your dark side. It is not the worst version of you. It is the hidden side of you, the parts of your personality, your desires, your emotions, and your impulses that were deemed unacceptable by your early environment and were therefore pushed out of conscious awareness. Every child begins life as a whole being, curious, emotional, expressive, sometimes angry, sometimes needy, sometimes wild. And then the world begins to respond. Parents, teachers, culture, religion, all of them communicate in countless ways what is acceptable and what is not. Be quieter. Don't be so sensitive. Stop being so angry. You're too much. You're not enough. Good girls don't do that. Strong boys don't feel that. And so the child divides. The parts that receive approval move to the front, into the persona, the face we show the world. And the parts that receive rejection move to the back, into the shadow, where they are hidden but not gone. The shadow does not disappear. It goes underground. And from underground, it runs. How does the shadow actually show up in your life? The most classic form is projection. We see in others what we cannot see in ourselves. The person who is unconsciously angry, who has buried their rage beneath a composed exterior, finds themselves intensely triggered by other people's anger. The emotion they most despise in others is almost always the emotion they most disown in themselves. The person who has buried their neediness beneath fierce independence finds themselves contemptuous of clingy or dependent people. They cannot tolerate in others what they have made invisible in themselves. This is why the things that trigger you most strongly are some of the most useful maps to your own shadow. Not always, but often enough to be worth examining. A second way the shadow shows up is in what Jungians call shadow eruptions, moments when the hidden material breaks through the surface without warning. The person who is always calm and composed, and then explodes disproportionately over something small. The explosion is not about the small thing. It is about everything that has been suppressed beneath the composure. The person who is generous to a fault, and then has moments of surprising cruelty or resentment. The cruelty is not random. It is the unexpressed anger of someone who has given too much for too long without acknowledging their own needs. A third manifestation is self-sabotage, when a part of you that has been rejected by your conscious identity, your ambition, your sexuality, your desire for recognition, your anger, cannot be expressed directly. It finds indirect roots. It undermines the relationships your conscious self wants. It derails the success your conscious self is working toward. Not out of malice, out of a desperate need to exist. The shadow is not your enemy. It is the part of you that survived by hiding, and it will keep disrupting your life until you are willing to see it. Shadow work is not about becoming dark. It is about becoming whole. Jung called this process integration. The goal is not to eliminate the shadow. That is impossible. The goal is to bring its contents into conscious awareness, where they can be understood, worked with, and ultimately transformed from unconscious drivers into conscious resources. Because here is what almost no one tells you about the shadow. It carries not only what was painful, but what was powerful. The child who is told they were too much, their intensity is in the shadow. The child who is told to stop dreaming, their vision is in the shadow. The child who was punished for their anger, their boundaries are in the shadow. Shadow work is how you get those things back. It begins with curiosity rather than judgment. With asking, when you are triggered, what is this showing me about myself? When you notice a strong reaction, positive or negative, to someone else's behavior, do I carry this too, in some form? It continues with what I want to offer you now, a first practice, a beginning. Take a slow breath in and let it go. Bring your attention into your body, not to fix anything, not to change anything, just to notice. Think of a quality in another person that genuinely bothers you, something that triggers a real reaction, not a mild preference, a real charge. Hold that quality in your mind. Now ask yourself, gently, without judgment, is there any version of this quality that lives in me? Not the same expression, not the same intensity, but some form of it? Maybe you are triggered by someone's arrogance. Is there a part of you that wants to be seen, that has learned to hide that desire because wanting recognition felt unsafe or shameful? Maybe you are triggered by someone's neediness. Is there a part of you that has learned to be fiercely self-sufficient because needing things was never safe? You do not have to answer yes. You only have to stay curious. Sit with that question for a moment. Breathe. Notice what arises. Not to fix it, not to judge it, just to see it. Take another breath in and release. That moment of seeing, however small, is the beginning of integration. Now let me give you some real examples of how the shadow shows up in daily life, because sometimes seeing it in others helps us recognize it in ourselves. The person who is deeply uncomfortable around people who express anger openly, who describes them as aggressive or out of control, and who has never once raised their voice in an adult relationship. Their anger is in the shadow. It comes out as passive aggression, as sarcasm, as the cutting remark delivered with a smile. The person who is endlessly generous, who gives, and who privately feels a deep resentment toward people who are openly ambitious or self-promoting. Their ambition is in the shadow. It appears as bitterness toward others who have what they want, but won't admit wanting. The person who prides themselves on being rational, logical, unmoved by emotion, and who is secretly terrified of their own emotional depth. Their feeling is in the shadow. It erupts in moments of disproportionate reaction. The situation that suddenly overwhelms them with an intensity they cannot explain. Do you recognize yourself in any of these? You don't have to answer out loud. Just notice. And now, a second practice. This one works directly with the shadow through writing. You can do this after the video, or right now if you have something to write with. Take a slow breath in and let it go. Think of someone in your life who genuinely irritates you, someone whose behavior you find difficult to tolerate. Now complete these sentences, in your mind, or write them down. What bothers me most about them is... Take a moment to answer that honestly. Really feel into it. Now ask, is there any situation, any context, where I do something similar? Not the same, not as extreme, but some version of it? Stay with that for a moment. Breathe. The part of me I see in them is... You don't have to have a complete answer. Just notice what arises. Even the resistance to the question is information. Take another breath in and release. That is shadow work. Not dramatic, not painful, just honest. Just the quiet, courageous act of turning toward what you would rather look away from. The shadow has been running your life from the dark. Not because it is evil, because it has never been given light. You are not broken for having a shadow. Every human being has one. The ones who cause the most harm in the world are not the ones with the largest shadows. They are the ones who are most certain they have none. Shadow work is an act of profound courage and of profound compassion for the parts of yourself that survived by hiding and that are still waiting to be welcomed home. Subscribe to Soul Decoded. And in the comments, do you recognize the pattern? Which wound resonates most? Abandonment, rejection, or fusion? Your answer might be the beginning of something different.